Usually, we tend to see what happens to our heroes and their friends during a story. There's normally a nice little conclusion, perhaps a little sequel bait, or better yet, actual sequels to give us closure. However, not everyone can be so lucky. Some characters, beloved, supporting, or otherwise, don't make the cut into the continuation, be it for budget or pacing reasons, or maybe some real-world conflict like pay disputes stopping actors reprising them puts the fate of those left behind ambiguous. All is not lost though, as we've seen the occasional reference, tribute, or Easter egg pop up along the way. It could just be a weapon left behind, a line of dialogue burying the hatchet, or even a decade-old feud reignited one last time. Weirdly, it could be some indirect jabbing that turns accidentally prophetic, or worse still, a grisly fate for someone who only had good intentions. Either way, in the world of gaming, the lost can sometimes be found, if you're up to the challenge. With that in mind, I'm Will for WhatCulture, and here are 10 lost gaming characters hidden in video games. 10. Red HARLOW, Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2. The transition from Revolver to Redemption signified a tonal shift in Rockstar's storytelling ways, at least for some of their games. Whereas Red Dead Revolver had some slightly fantastical elements to it, Redemption was more or less grounded in the world of realism and focuses on strong character stories. It seems like the heroes of past, such as Revolver's protagonist Red HARLOW, weren't suited in this new dawn of the Old West. He may be gone, but he is not forgotten. At the end of Revolver, Red simply leaves the carnage behind him, never to be seen again. But legends live on, as word of his exploits reaches certain campfires that John Marston can rest at in his journey to bring Dutch to justice. This is elaborated more in RDR2, and as it's a prequel, Harlow's exploits are more recent. Again, resting at campfires will enlighten Arthur Morgan of the legend that Red became. Rumor has it he's now a legendary bounty hunter, with what happened at Brimstone furthering that legend, and I for one certainly wouldn't want to be on that guy's list. 9. Joe BARBARO, Mafia 3. Here's some friendly advice: don't get too attached to the characters in the Mafia franchise, they'll probably end up dying. Given the nature of Joe BARBARO, you wouldn't be forgiven for thinking that he is going to end up wearing concrete boots. So when it seems like Joe is kidnapped towards the end of Mafia 2, you'd be thinking that that was it. Done deal, bada bing, bada boom. Sleeping with the fishes, capiche, gabagool, I'm walking here. Okay, that's enough of that. However, when Vito shows up in the criminally underrated Mafia 3, it seems like our boy Joe's fate was left hanging in the air. It seems that Vito hasn't found out who's responsible for Joe's kidnap and presumed death, so he sends Lincoln out on a potential revenge mission. It was an unexpected slice of continuity that fans weren't really expecting, having had Joe's fate seemingly written at the end of the second game. Fan service or tenuous connection tying the games together? You decide. 8. Lynch, Hitman Absolution. Now, it's fair to say that the Kane and Lynch games weren't very good. The first one was passable and the second one was laughable. It essentially killed any hope of a franchise for the pair, but the IO still likes to play the odd tribute to them every now and then. Whilst it's true that Lynch is quite obviously plain to see in Hitman Absolution's southern levels on a firing range, he still has an undetermined fate. Well, unless you decide to see if the atomic bomb suspended in the lobby of Dexter's laboratories is live or not. Spoiler alert, it is. It seems that while he may have left town before Agent 47, whether he knew something was up or not, there's no escaping that blast radius. Of course, no one survives the explosion, including our silent assassin, so it's not considered canon, but it is nice to get some potential closure on the less stable of the criminal pair that took on the Chinese underworld. 7. Solid Snake, Ghost Recon Wildlands. Rivalries in games are nothing new, be it in-game like Dante and Virgil of Devil May Cry, or real-world feuds like Mario and Sonic did before the latter sold out. Such as it was, Splinter Cell and Metal Gear Solid had a playful rivalry back in their heyday, making jabs at each other's exploits across their adventures. Fisher making craps about shaking items out of enemies, the famous tri-light goggles being mocked in an MGS trailer, that kind of gentle, friendly ribbing. But all that was back then, when they were at the peak of their fame. Since MGS4 wrapped up Solid Snake's arc back in 2008, we've seen nothing new of the prematurely aged spy. A couple of nods here, some Smash Bros cameos there, but otherwise presumably settling into early retirement. So it's nice to see that the hatches have been buried, as evidenced when Fisher asks about the guy in the bandana in Wildlands. Lamenting that he may be one of the last true stealth operatives left, it's a lovely nod to the adventures we've had with the pair. 6. KATARN, Star Wars Battlefront. Now, I thought I'd change jobs a few times in quick succession, but I've got nothing on KATARN. Once a member of the Galactic Empire until realizing that, gasp, they were the baddies, Kyle pulled a Han Solo and went mercenary. As these things go, he then joined the Rebel Alliance, and after a fashion, lo and behold, he was actually very good at being a Jedi too. And like most Jedi post-Order 66, he occasionally walks that fine line between light and dark side for just some good measure. If I'm being glib, it's because there is a lot of history to this man, in and around the events of the main films and some of the EU as well. It's worth checking out, honestly. At least someone must have thought so on the DICE team, as a tribute pops up in the form of his K-16 pistol in the Star Wars Battlefront expansion, the Death Star. Does this mean he's still around? Well, perhaps. Maybe he's on a mission, or maybe he's returned to the Empire. It's a cool nod either way. 5. Weaver, Fable 2. It can't be easy being a guild master, managing proteges and heroes of legend, running a guild, and probably a buttload of admin to deal with too. We should be thankful that Weaver takes his time to keep an eye on our hero's vitals throughout his journey to save Albion. Using the guild seal as a telepathic link, old Weaver was always ready to diss out some sage wisdom if your health was low, and that you should use a potion. Helpful stuff in theory. Except it seems the hero of Albion from the first game didn't see it that way. Granted, you wouldn't expect him to be alive 500 years later for the sequel, but it would be nice to see how Weaver's fate had played out, and as it transpires, it did not go well. Take a look at Fable 2's loading screens, and one shines a light on what went down after the events of the first game. Turns out, the former guildmaster was killed by the fabled hero, who snapped and carved "Your health is low" on Weaver's forehead. Ouch. 4. EARTHWORM Jim, Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy Kong's Quest. Nothing sucks more than when a little cheeky dig becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, but that's exactly what happened to the eponymous worm in a supersuit after having fun poked at him in Donkey Kong Country 2. Being called a no-hopper is unfortunately what happened to Jim's last game, the poorly received EARTHWORM Jim 3D. The leap to 3D gaming was not kind on a lot of gaming mascots, and EARTHWORM Jim fell harder than most. As such, it's harsh to see Jim's blaster cast aside in DKC 2. There has been a new EARTHWORM Jim game announced recently, but nothing concrete has been unearthed yet. 3. Ash Williams, Spelunky. Ash of Evil Dead fame has had a resurgence in the realm of television in the last few years, in Ash vs. the Evil Dead hitting 3 seasons before cancellation. In the wide world of video games though, Ash has only really served as cameos and guest appearances. Popping up in Broforce, Dead by Daylight, and Poker Night 2, Ash's last headlining adventure was a full 15 years ago in Evil Dead Regeneration. While we may not have had a new game, it's still nice to see the legend live on in Spelunky, where you'd least expect it. Now, to the unsuspecting, a grave with Ash written on it is nothing, but dig by the grave and you'll be treated to a trusty broomstick. That's a shotgun to your eye. That doesn't confirm whether Williams left it there or died, but if it's the latter, it's probably not worth digging out the Necronomicon to try and resurrect him. That kind of thing never ends well. 2. Space Invaders, Battletoads. To borrow a music analogy, Space Invaders would be what we refer to as a one-hit wonder. Sure, there's been countless remakes and jazzed-up versions, but nothing substantial that succeeded the original, and it's very much a one-trick pony. That's not a dig, that's just how it goes. There are only so many ways you can polish the same alien before people move on. So kudos to Rare for trying to spark some nostalgia for the titular Invaders by chucking them in their eponymous debut back in 1991. One good turn deserves another and all that. Yet this time, rather than descend from the top of the screen to slowly advance on you in a menacingly horizontal way, the little blighters pop up from time to time for your toad of choice to thwart. Fail to do so and the sprightly little sods will hop up and steal chunks of your life bar. 1. LETHO, Witcher 3: The Wild Hunt. Politics and motivations in Witcher games have never been black and white, so naturally when we're first introduced to Letho in the second game, our thoughts naturally gravitate towards bad guy. Granted, he has decapitated a king, so that's only fair. But as we discover more of the Witcher from the Viper School, there's more than meets the eye. We learn that Letho has been as much a pawn as Geralt has, with the two inadvertently facing off against each other. Yet, you don't need to kill Letho, instead letting him flee to presumably never be seen again. But for the inquisitive side quester, Letho makes an appearance in the Wild Hunt, should you fancy seeking him out. Again, you can let him go after helping him, or better yet, ask him to help towards the endgame in the mighty final battle. It shows the effort that CD Projekt Red put in, allowing you to tie up a story thread from a previous game. So remember, it does pay off to not go around murdering everyone who's different from you in The Witcher. And in real life. I phrased that like it was a good thing to do in real life. Don't do it in real life either. Well, there you have it, folks. 10 lost gaming characters hidden in video games. Feel free to drop this video a like if you enjoyed it, and drop me a follow on Twitter at YouSlyDogU. I'm Will for WhatCulture. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.